sometimes it just takes time. Like you said, culture change is a beast, and it's hard to, if people don't see it happening regularly, they think, okay, that's not going to happen again, or it's just a one-time thing. But now that people have seen it happen every quarter for 3-4 quarters in a row, I think people know, they're going to have a place to do this going forward.
Ideas, by definition, are always fragile.
No tolerance for failure, no innovation.
The best ideas have to win.
This is the Synthesize Pod from Bright Idea. It's your weekly hit of insights and actionable strategies for innovation-minded professionals that just want to get shit done. Welcome to Season 1, Just Say Hackathon.
All right. We are back again with the Synthesize Pod, and today we've got an awesome presentation here, or conversation, I should say, with Giovanna from Amtrak. Now, everyone knows Amtrak, the train system that we know and love and moves us around the country, and we are going to delve into her innovation best practices for doing hackathons at Amtrak. Welcome, Giovanna.
All right. Thank you for having me.
So, Giovanna, thanks for coming here to talk to this community. I know people are really interested in what you'll have to say. I figure we just start with a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to be an innovation team member, innovation team leader, how your career got you onto that journey, and then we can get into the hackathon stuff specifically in the second half.
Sounds great. Thanks. So, first, Giovanna Martosella. Right now, my role at Amtrak is Senior Program Manager on the innovation team. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, so right up on the Northeast Corridor, which is perfect for this role here. Just a little bit about me personally. I'm married. I have a 3-year-old son, which is kind of my inspiration on a day-to-day basis. But from a career standpoint, I think I probably have a variety of background experiences that are not directly innovation related, but have kind of led me to where I'm at today. I actually started out in international business, and my degree is in international business and management information systems. So I started out doing things more in the trade world. I worked for the Department of Commerce for a little bit, so back in government. And if you had asked me back then, I might have thought that I would maybe be an ambassador or doing something like that in the government world, and took a pretty big shift when I added management information systems to my degree. My first job out of college, I actually started at Dow Chemical, and I was working in business intelligence and analytics. And really starting off by doing a lot of training. I had a community of practice where I was getting business leaders to really learn how to use data to make decisions on a day-to-day basis. And then I started, as I was training people and talking with all these business leaders, noticed that our systems weren't always the most user-friendly. So I got more into the product space. I was taking some courses in user experience and interaction design, and became the de facto, you could say, product manager on our analytics and BI team. From there, I wanted some more managerial experience, and so I jumped to a role at a company called Global Fit, which has since rebranded to Husk. And there I was really the IT director, so I did everything from product management of managing all of our internal team and external team of designers and developers, to the things like managing their cybersecurity program and even creating new apps for businesses that we had even acquired or started from the ground up. So very wide variety of experience there. And that has kind of led me to this role at Amtrak, where I am the program manager on the innovation team. I was really just looking for a little bit of a change from a work-life balance standpoint. I was pretty burnt out, I guess you could say, just from a real standpoint. And Amtrak just felt like a perfect place for me. It was a great combination of my skills and the things I was interested in, and also a great opportunity for growth and just honestly to make a difference. There's a lot of change happening, a lot of growth at Amtrak right now in terms of trying to increase the number of people and places that we can get people to. And so I just felt like it was the perfect opportunity. So long story short, I don't have, I guess you could say, like a real background or degree or anything like that in innovation, but a lot of the skills that I have align with the work that I'm doing here at Amtrak and the role that I'm in here. So
Yeah, I think that's a common thread of people who've kind of dipped their toes in a lot of different buckets before they landed in innovation. And then innovation gives them an opportunity to kind of pull together some of those disparate skills and threads. How long have you been at Amtrak for?
I started in October, so I've been here for about 8 months now.
Okay. And you just kind of were in that role, the prior role, and you just kind of started looking for other opportunities, and then that popped up, or did someone tell you about it? I'm just curious how you came to be aware of it.
Yeah, so my husband is actually a hairstylist, and so he is constantly talking to his clients and friends about me, and he, finally was able to get to a point where he can explain to people what I do for a living. And
how many years did that take?
Every single role, it takes a couple years. But yeah, he was actually talking to one of his friends from high school and explaining, I was looking for something new. And she said, hey, we just started an innovation team at Amtrak. You should really consider telling her about it to check out and see if they have any new roles. I know they're a growing team. So I went out and just started looking for some of the roles out there. And yeah, that's it. I applied for the role and just kind of got to meet the team. I was super excited about it, a little intimidated because, again, I didn't come from a background in innovation. I didn't have all the same functional expertise that a lot of the people on the team had, but I was super just inspired and encouraged and was hopeful, that I would land the job, and here I am.
Nice.
I think that makes a lot of sense too, though, with the product background, because essentially that is a lot of product work, right? Is imagining something that doesn't exist and then trying to programmatically build it in a way that, actually works. And so I imagine that for innovation program management, there's a lot of similarities with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think originally I was looking for something that was more of a product role, and it does align very closely. I feel like a lot of the similar things that I'm doing, relationship management with internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, building processes for the team, even doing research and designing out some of these solutions. So it definitely aligns very closely with that experience.
And what does the team makeup look like? I mean, are you 3 people? Are you 10 people? And who does the team kind of tree up under in the organization?
Yeah, so we all report up to Ryan Levier, who has a much more seasoned background in innovation than I do. He started the team about 1.5 years ago. He was the first hire. And then under him, we have a director of strategic foresight, so kind of that futures practice. We have service design. We have user experience research, visual design, interaction design. So kind of runs the gamut. We have a variety of different skill sets, and a lot of the team members are kind of cross-functional. We play off each other a lot. So that's the major kind of functionalities that we work within. And then we partner with a lot of internal organizations. We've had partnerships with sustainability, commercial operations. And so we really try and collaborate as much as possible, especially with other teams. We have a whole team dedicated to, user experience design, employee experience, things like that. So some functional skill sets as well. And so we've designed a community of practice where we collaborate with them on projects and kind of bounce some of those functional skill sets off each other as well.
And Ryan was doing innovation work before he came over to Amtrak to lead the team?
Yeah, Ryan has a background in innovation. He worked at Coca-Cola, Accenture. He was at GE Transportation, where he spun up one of their innovation, I think their first initial innovation team there. So he's been doing innovation work and has several degrees in innovation as well. So he's kind of spearheaded a lot of the innovation strategy that we're implementing today.
And then I don't know if this is outside the scope, but is Amtrak quasi-governmental? How do they see themselves? Are they government sponsored? How do you articulate that line?
It's always a good question and a hard one to answer. I say quasi-government. It's technically a federally chartered corporation, which means that the federal government is a majority stakeholder. We have a board of directors, so technically our board of directors is appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. We are a for-profit company, not a public authority, but all of the things that we do really have public interest in mind. So yeah, you could say quasi-government.
Got it. Well, before we move off Amtrak, I am inspired by our last guest, Jordan from Rocket Mortgage. He did a little bit of show and tell, so I brought some show and tell here. Amtrak's a big thing in my house, and my son loves trains. So this is his Amtrak train, and I don't know if you can see, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And he runs these in the backyard and whatnot. So he loves trains so much that when we go to Sacramento from California, he won't let me drive. We have to take the train there to and then go visit our friends there. So it's a train and an Uber instead of a ride. So but yeah, we go up to the front of the train so you can see out the front, and we can see the guys driving the train and the rail, and every road crossing with the bells ringing, he calls that an up and down track. So I think you understand, having a 3-year-old, it's kind of takes over your world in some ways. So yeah, we're huge fans of Amtrak and have seen a lot of really awesome developments. Got on the train with the mobile app and Wi-Fi, and the map puts you exactly where you are and whether you're going to be early or late. It's not your grandfather's Amtrak, I guess you could say, and a lot of cool stuff that you guys.
There you go. If you're looking for new taglines for Amtrak,
not your grandfather's Amtrak. I'll have to write that one down. Yeah, that's funny. We call those rail fans, and it's kind of cool because I feel like a lot of employees too are rail fans, and I definitely feel like I am becoming one. I just recently took the auto train, which, if you've never heard of, is a train between Florida and the DC area where you also bring your car on. So I just did a little experiment with my brother because he was coming up from Florida, and so I feel like I am definitely becoming one of those train people, which I just love in general too. So
I've been on that train. So I used to live in West Palm as a kid, and my grandparents, my mom's parents, were in DC, and so we would take the auto train, and yeah, quite a fun experience as a child to load your car up onto a train.
I think if you work in any field where people's kids want their picture taken in front of what you're doing, that's a good place to be.
It is.
Okay, cool. So let's talk a little bit more about kind of the innovation program there at Amtrak, and kind of some of the, I know we haven't spoken before, and we like to keep these things kind of fresh so we don't know much more than our community and the audience. But maybe you can take us through some of the different activities you guys are doing as part of the innovation program.
The innovation program at a whole, we sort of say that our vision is to really facilitate a culture of innovation and empower, every single person at Amtrak to be able to innovate. And so we do that through a variety of different ways. We like to say that we sort of do 3 things. The first thing that we do, or we consider ourselves to do, is deep R&D. And so you can think of that as the traditional sense of R&D, where we're going out to explore and experiment with novel ideas, technologies, methodologies, to really create new solutions and reduce risk for the organization. So sometimes we'll have a business partner that comes out and says, hey, we have this idea or this thought, but we don't have enough data to really know if we should invest in this or make a decision, or we don't know how to do this. And so we'll go out and do research. And so that's where a lot of our service designers and user experience designers and researchers go out and just really, are doing real research. The second thing that we do is we call it enablement, innovation enablement. And that's where we're going out through the entire organization and trying to build a culture of innovation. So we do that through tools, one of them being Bright Idea, events, creating resources that help people understand the innovation process and how to innovate, how to brainstorm, how to build a pitch or a business case, things like that. And then the last thing that we do is future visioning. So this is something more where we have our strategic foresight practice. We're going out and looking at signals, creating reports, trend reports that we can sort of inspire people and allow people to sort of envision the future of what could Amtrak be, helping people in different teams create roadmaps so they can look into creating that more long-term vision of what we might want to be in the future. So all in all, I think we do a variety of different things, and we're still a new program, so we are still developing and building relationships with all of these different teams. But those are the 3 things that we, sort of holistically spend our time doing right now.
And then you guys run several, hackathon type events throughout the year?
Yeah, so we do our own pitch events right now every quarter. It's kind of sponsored by the innovation team. Sometimes we'll have a business partner say, hey, we want to do it on a specific topic. Like we recently did one on sustainability. Sometimes we'll do one on our own that's more geared towards those signals we're gathering and sort of the themes that we have. But then we also partner with individual organizations within Amtrak. So the hackathon that we sponsor is in partnership with our digital technology group. And that is also a quarterly hackathon, but it's really more an enablement where it's not us doing all the work, but we're kind of showing them, hey, here's how you lead a hackathon. We'll help give you the resources, help build it out for you. And then you guys can go and keep doing this every quarter and solving whatever problems you want to solve. So yeah, we do a variety of different things, whether they're sponsored by us or business partners. But again, it's really that enablement to try to enable everyone at Amtrak to be able to innovate.
Did it start off every quarter, or was that something that it ramped up to?
So ironically, my first week, I was at the first pitch event that we had, which was our sustainability one. And so I was like, wow, this is crazy. I was, not sure exactly how it all worked, how it all fit together. And it's been something that we have been trying to figure out, like, what's the right cadence? How do we integrate all of our strategy and business processes to make sure that we're using these pitches to spend our time on the right things, right? The hackathons is something that we've done in partnership with the Agility Enablement team, which is Amtrak is going through an agile transformation right now. And so they sort of do quarterly, PIs, right? If you're familiar with agile transformation at all. And so it just sort of made sense to do it quarterly. And at first it started as, okay, we're going to do an innovation activity every quarter, which our first one was a hackathon. And we started building this process with the team. So I had two other people that were helping me sort of lead it. And, we just, every quarter, we're like, okay, are we doing the hackathon again? Yes. And we just kept pushing for it. And so now we're on our third one, planning for the fourth one coming up. And so, yeah, it just sort of kept developing over time. It was a little bit of a push of a culture change to continue to keep doing it. People always have priorities of other things they want to do, but I think it's just one of those things where you have to be persistent and eventually it catches on.
And that digital team, are they the ones primarily that own, the web and the mobile properties, or what's kind of their scope of their role?
Yeah, so within our agile transformation, the people within that group, we have a digital technology function, which is, yes, more of what you would see as traditional IT teams, but our agile transformation goes across the business and the technical teams. And so we've launched this through the agile group, which includes both business and technical people. And so that hackathon really encompasses various cross-functional stakeholders, not just technical people. So I would say it's a little different than a traditional hackathon where people are getting in a room and coding all day. And it's more focused on coming up with creative solutions to business problems and, getting business and non-business people to collaborate, and almost also helping some technical folks see more of that business side of understanding the desirability, viability, feasibility of an idea and a solution, not just thinking about, okay, what can I code in 24 hours or whatever the case is. So,
yep. And how do you guys connect all that? You're talking about the agile stuff. How does that get connected back to planning? Because obviously you can have a lot of great ideas to fix this business problem, but then how does it connect with, planning and resourcing and all that jazz?
So I think that is something that we've done a good job at so far of integrating into the PI planning process. So PI planning, like I said, we do it quarterly, and there is a .6 iteration at the very end of every iteration that's called the innovation and planning iteration. And within that time period, you're supposed to be dedicated to innovation and planning. And so they do PI planning, which is basically a big event where everybody gets together in person and they plan out their next quarter of work. And so we have traditionally done the hackathon within that time period because we know people have a little bit more time where they're not crunched on doing other work. They have time dedicated to it. And just this last time recently, we actually went to the PI planning event, which was hosted in Wilmington, Delaware. And we had a table set up. So we were recruiting people to sign up for the hackathon. We had little idea cards where we were able to get them to start thinking about their ideas to submit for the hackathon. So we've always kind of said from an innovation standpoint that we want to meet Amtrak where they are. I think, like you said, being in quasi-government is a little bit different than being in a fully, for-profit business or, corporation where you can kind of make decisions however you'd like. And so we try to meet Amtrak where they are, and I think that's one of the ways that we've found it to be very successful is trying to integrate into some of those existing processes and the way that we make decisions or plan our work, plan our resources out. So I wouldn't say that we have it fully figured out, and it's something that we're still fine-tuning and trying to really, make sure that we understand and are doing right. But I think we have a good head start.
I think that's a funny overlap of like innovation and planning. It kind of feels like those are opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like, are you going to plan for innovation, or are you planning for the innovation that you already know what it's going to be? Hearing you say that it was kind of like tickled my brain in a funny way of like innovation feels like it's on the opposite side of the spectrum of actual planning. But I suppose you do have to plan and set aside time for innovation too.
Yeah, for sure.
Any interesting stories that have come up in your time there? Anything that surprised you? Anything? I concede you with one that Patrick told me about, but I'll leave it open to you first if there's anything.
No, I'm curious.
Yeah, Patrick's telling some.
I know. I think I'm going to put Patrick
spicy
on
stories.
Well, Patrick was telling me about there was like you guys really wanted to get like drive home the point that anyone and everyone could participate. And that you actually got one of like the ticket counter individuals or someone like that, someone in the actual stations that was involved, and people kind of came in to help them flesh out their idea and make it presentable to management. So maybe share some of that story.
Yeah, of course. So that actually was our first pitch event. So that wasn't a hackathon, that was more of a pitch. And so I would say our goals from an innovation standpoint and reaching all of those employees, we have started more in the corporate side where we're, people who work in marketing and commercial and operations, but we also want to ensure that we're enabling people who are frontline employees that are, on the trains, conductors, engineers, at the ticket counters, customer service. There's so many of these people who have amazing ideas and see the day-to-day interactions and can innovate. And I think one of the misnomers about innovation is that they have to be technology innovations. And so one of the things that we wholeheartedly believe is that innovation is not synonymous with technology. And one of the reasons why Ryan hired service design and foresight as some of his first hires is that exactly. I mean, we're in a service business and technology is an enabler. And so we want to make sure that something can be a human change, a change in someone's role. It could be a change in a process. So that's something that we really try to embody in all of the work and all of the projects that we do. So back to your original question on that specific challenge. Yeah, we had a challenge that was related to sustainability. It was called Historic Stations of the Future. And so a lot of our stations across the country are historic. And so there are limited things that we can do to change them for whether it's based on, rules and regulations from a historic society or just structural, difficulties and challenges. But we also want to make sure that we're modernizing our stations to meet the needs of modern consumers. And we want to make sure that they're accessible, sustainable. So there are a lot of different ways that you can go about that. And so we opened this one up to our historic Wilmington station because that's where our new innovation studio was launched. And so our team kind of did a little bit of a research experiment. They went out and shadowed people, different people that worked in the station to see what did they do on a day-to-day basis and what considerations should we think about from a historic station, but also a sustainability perspective. And so we had 3 finalists in that event. Actually 2 of them were ticket agents from the station itself. And so they came up. That was before our studio was actually live. But we hosted an in-person event where they came and they did their pitch. We kind of helped them through thinking about desirability, viability, and feasibility. And then, we recorded the pitch and we presented a winner and a finalist. So that pitch itself is something that we're still working with our sustainability group on. Some of the ideas related to reducing the amount of paper that we're using in terms of printing out tickets or, the lighting at the station and how can we potentially incorporate something like solar or, automation to reduce electricity usage at stations. So a lot of variety of ideas. And yeah, we definitely want to make sure that, like I said, anyone at Amtrak can participate and use the tools and resources that we are making available.
I think it's so cool that you can have someone on the front lines that can have this kind of gem of an insight. They can get it to you guys, and then you can deploy, more people, researchers and whatnot to kind of, get at what they're, trying to convey and build that up to a way where the leadership can take action on it. It's really cool. And I did actually see something at an Amtrak station where they were doing something sustainable, where they had like windows in the right places, where the sun heated the air and it created like natural air circulation, all this stuff. So it was pretty cool to see that stuff.
You did your research, Matt, hanging out at Amtrak stations right before this call, huh?
I put in my time for sure. But no, I haven't gone south yet. I want to go down to LA because I think they have cooler engines. But my son has simulators and everything for the engines and stuff. So there's like the older engines and the newer engines. So that's the next project, is to figure out how we go south on Amtrak. Maybe go down to LA. Something like that.
I love that story, though, of the fact that there was 2 finalists that were ticket agents, because I do feel like sort of promise of innovation is almost this bottoms up methodology, right? That like folks that are actually experiencing the pain points themselves might have more creative solution than somebody that's pontificating in a room somewhere. And so can you talk to me a little bit about like your own ethos of what innovation should be or why it's so heavily needed?
Yeah, I mean, I personally believe in just a diversity of thought and diversity of ideas. And to do that, you need to have a diverse group of people. This is actually something I was thinking about a lot before this podcast, of like what kind of drew me to innovation and that diversity of thought. And it goes back like pretty far. When I was in middle school, I think, I got this letter in the mail, and it was a program called People to People Student Ambassadors. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but I'm sure every kid probably got this letter in the mail. And it was basically an ambassador program where, you got to go on an international trip with a group of other students. And, it was just, to me, there was some spark. And I kind of relate that back to a spark and an idea, and something that just, people have these triggers, right? Of it's either a pain point or something exciting, something they're interested in.
Well, you got to tell us more about this program. Did you go on the trip, or what happened?
Yes, I did. So the program, yes, I went on the program. Basically, there was a whole application and interview process, and my parents were so real with me. They were like, listen, we love this. We want you to go, but like, we can't afford to pay for this. It was pretty expensive for the trip. So anyway, I worked in a diner down the street, and I, pretty much just worked every shift I could. I made all these like chocolates to sell. I wrote sponsorship letters. I did everything I could to go on this trip. And yeah, it was, ultimately I raised enough money for the trip. I went to China for about 3 weeks, various different cities. And I think that is something that, like, for me personally was just like a life-changing, defined a lot of who I was, really helped guide like why I went to school for international business in the first place, and really just shaped a lot of my like love for travel, which is one of the reasons why I love working for Amtrak because you get to take the trains for free. And also just diversity of thought and experience. Like, I truly just believe that I saw so many things as that young that a lot of people don't get to see. And I just saw the value in, being able to travel and see how people experience things differently. And I was actually just researching back on it when I was thinking about this. And there were a lot of like innovative people who actually participated in this program. It was actually created by President Eisenhower in the 1950s as a way to like exchange ideas and experiences between people to ease some of the tensions after the Cold War. And so people like Walt Disney, Joyce Hall, who is the founder of Hallmark Cards, Bob Hope, who is a comedian, a lot of these like really diverse people, not just people in government or politics or whatever, were involved in this program. And so I just thought that was a really great experience and way to relate it back to innovation, because I feel like it had a great impact on me, and I'm sure a lot of other people through this program. So that's a little bit about the ethos and like my thoughts on diversity of ideas.
That's awesome. I think that having that light bulb moment at such a young age of, oh, there's more than one way to do something, right? There's more than one way to have to have breakfast or to travel or to build houses or to dress or whatever it might be. I think that is really powerful for everyone to experience, but especially at such a young age. So that's incredible, and incredible for your own gumption and drive to be like, I'm going on this trip. I will be creative. I'll ask for money. I'll sell things. I'll work at a diner. Kudos to younger you. That's really impressive.
I'm sorry, you said that was middle school or that was high school?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what year, but I think I was the summer between 8th and 9th grade. So like right between middle and high school.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, just to see, I mean, as an innovation geek, when I travel, I just notice like the differences in the technology, right? Like if you go to Central America, there's a different, role of technology in people's lives than here, or say China. So I was kind of blown away that the little bit of time I spent in China was just like the story for another day. But yeah, very cool. So I guess where do you see all this headed with Amtrak, and what's on the docket? What does the future look like?
Yeah, great question. So I'll have to ask our futures person. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done. I feel like in a lot of areas, I feel like there's a lot to still innovate, even we say at the core, right? So what we really are trying to do over the next year to 2 years is give employees the resources and tools that they need to be able to innovate. So I hope that this hackathon that we've been planning continues to take off, and, we can really drive I feel like we're just starting to really feel the culture change. So I'm excited after this third hackathon and now going up on the fourth one that we're really starting to see people excited and feel like their ideas matter and they're getting to the right people and that stuff is happening. It's really hard to get stuff to happen, especially sometimes in a big company or even in a government world. So there are a lot of challenges, whether it's funding or time or knowing the right person to talk to. And so I still think that one of our biggest roles on the innovation team is really creating the connections between different teams. Like sometimes there are the same things happening in little pockets, and there's these miniature solutions or two solutions of the same thing that are being created that if they had just talked to each other, maybe one better solution would have come, or, you would think of something that you didn't think about before. So I think there's a lot of work to be done still. And so our hope is really, through this year and next year to continue to reach all employees and start seeing a more formalized process around innovation where it's a regular, just known thing that's happening. Like, you submit your ideas at this time. It's reviewed by, executive leadership at this time, or whoever the right people are, to make sure that those ideas get heard and can get into the funding cycle at the right time for the right people. So that's kind of like our hope, or at least from my standpoint in program management. That's a lot of the stuff that I'm working on in the background, so that once we get to a point when we can really enable people to enable at the core, we can start working on things that are more adjacent or transformational. But I definitely think we're not quite there yet.
Cultural change is a beast.
For sure.
I think I'm going to go a little bit out of sequence here, so breaking form a bit, because I want to go back to the digital technology team and just their hackathons. And were there any challenges? It sounds to me like the innovation team was kind of playing an enablement role there. Had they been running hackathons previously, and did you guys level them up, or was it that was their first and your first? And maybe you can just talk about any kind of trials and tribulations or successes and kind of getting them booted up.
Yeah, so I don't think, and I can't say this for 100% certainty, but I don't think that there was hackathons happening before. I think it was sort of as we were going through the Agile transformation. We report under the same group that the Agile enablement team reports under. So there are some synergies in terms of our team and our leadership. And we decided. And
is that tree up to like a transformation office, or is it like the technology group? What's kind of above all this?
Yeah. So right now we sit technically within the digital technology group.
Mm-hmm.
And we also work a little bit with our strategy team as well. So we sort of are in an interesting place right now where it's a little bit between, but technically we sit within the digital technology group.
I see. And they tree up, is there like a digital technology leader on the executive team, or do they then roll up to like a CTO or something like that?
Yes, we have a digital technology leader in our C-suite that we all roll up to.
Got it. Makes sense.
So yeah, I don't think they were running hackathons before, but as we are going more from a waterfall approach to an agile approach in our project management, especially in the technology space, and going through PI planning and all of that, it just kind of made sense to have a partnership for us to allow people this time and space to innovate. I think the first hackathon was actually in December of last year, which was after I started, and I helped. I don't think that they had another one before that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely been challenges. I think there's challenges always with new programs of just figuring out how to do it and how to meet Amtrak where they are and figure out the way that we're doing agile and who are the people on this team. I think that, persistence and just building relationships has been a really important part to get over some of the struggles that we've had. And we call it the Amtrakathon. As our
That's good.
So yeah, I think like the first one was interesting because it was, we're trying to figure it all out, right? The second one was a little bit of a struggle, if I'm going to be honest. People were not submitting ideas. At one point, we even kind of questioned, like, should we just skip it this quarter and do it next quarter, like revisit it next quarter? And we all kind of agreed, like, you know what? If we're going to do this, we need to just do it. We're going to find a way and make it work. And so we leaned into our judging panel. So basically, every time we do this hackathon, we spin up our new site, our new pipeline. We come up with some new content to kind of inspire people. We get a panel of judges that are going to help us throughout the hackathon. And then in the back end, we have a team who's kind of consistent throughout all of them, planning in the background and leading the sessions. And so this time we really leaned on our judges who were amazing. And we try to recruit cross-functional people within DT in the business. So sometimes it's our internal product managers, it's our people in architecture, user experience design, to get a variety of perspectives on the actual final pitches. And then people will submit ideas. We'll they'll form teams and create, their final pitch. We'll narrow down to a set of finalists. And then we have sort of a live virtual pitch where we select a winner and kind of go through some based on criteria that we'll talk about, like why they met the criteria or not. And then, they sort of get listed on our site as the winning team. We have a variety of different prizes, but yeah, I think one of the main learnings from that is just that you have to rely on other people. Again, especially in such a big organization. In February when we did this, I had only been here for probably like 4 months. And so I didn't know any developers within the organization or people that might be participating in it. And so I was like, what are we going to do? But we did a bunch of things. Like I said, we leaned on the judging panel. We created these like starter ideas that if people didn't have one, but they wanted to participate, they can just jump on one of our starter ideas. We kind of went out and tried to recruit people ourselves. And so at the end of the day, I think we learned a lot in that second hackathon just because we had a little bit of a struggle. And it's still not perfect, but our last one went much better. I think people were starting to see that culture change. We realized like people want some in-person component. So we went to PI planning and had a table. I got to go out and meet people and see all the people that were participating. So I really think it is about partially understanding the organization that you're in and what the people in that organization want for it to be successful. But I also think sometimes it just takes time. Like you said, culture change is a beast, and it's hard to, if people don't see it happening regularly, they think, okay, that's not going to happen again, or it's just a one-time thing. But now that people have seen it happen every quarter for 3-4 quarters in a row, I think people know, they're going to have a place to do this going forward. So that's some of the things in terms of struggles. I would say some of the more things that we've done successfully is, trying to inspire people. We've done a variety of different things for the winners and the finalists, everything from printed out certificates to t-shirts and swag. We even have a little innovation trophy where before I started, the innovation team went out to the Wilmington yard and they found an old train horn. And so they gathered all these pieces of the train horn, and we met up with our 3D printing team and they scanned in the train horn and made a replica of it. And so we give out these trophies. So I think, our Railfan employees love the train horn trophy. Some people like the swag. And so just having a variety of that, as well as we schedule a coffee chat with leaders so that they have the chance to then present out their idea to someone who might actually be able to pick it up and fund it. And so just trying to understand the things that motivate people and offer a variety of those things, I think has been super successful because, everybody likes something a little bit different. And so you kind of get everybody there.
That's fascinating. I think we've talked on previous episodes about, especially with hackathons, this idea of giving permission to take the space and time to do these projects, which might not go anywhere, right? Like there's, I'm sure, lots of projects and pitches that will never see the light of day. But that idea of giving permission, but it sounds too like what you've experienced is to get this culture change moving. It's not just about giving people time and permission. You also have to figure out the other ways to motivate them to participate in various different ways.
I think once we see some of these come to actual fruition and people are like, wow, that idea came out of the hackathon, and they see it happening live, that's going to be a big inflection point for us. And I know everybody's really excited for that.
So you said you leaned on the judges. Was it that you went to them and said, hey, can you kind of reach out to your teams and get some ideas going, get some teams started? How did that all come to be?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of that. It was a little bit of, hey, we know you guys know people who have ideas because they're in the trenches every day. I'm sure people on their teams are reporting stuff to them. So it was a little bit of that. And then it was, once we had some ideas, it was, hey, how can we use the feature where people put in the skills that they need. So let's say there's an idea, and someone needs a front-end developer. They need, someone who knows AI. They need a data person. We had the judges go out, and I was in there being like, hey, idea one needs this. Do you know anybody who can join this team? And just trying to get people to know that we were there to really support them and help them be successful so they didn't feel like they had to do the pitch by themselves. And, they didn't have enough experience. So yeah, it was a little bit of both, like getting them to get people to submit ideas, but also recruit some of the team members in the background. So it wasn't just people out on an island by themselves.
I'm glad you shared the making chocolates at the diner story because I'm seeing that ethos come through in everything you do. It seems like whatever it takes, get there, make it happen, be the person that, be the glue. I'm curious, just broadly speaking, that digital tech team, what is a typical project for them? Is it a feature for the mobile app? Is it something to do on the website? Is it something for internal intranet systems? When they're happy with the projects they're getting, what's kind of the typical characteristics of that project?
Yeah, so I think, yes, it's kind of interesting. The ownership of our app and our website and all of our kiosks, which is essentially the technology that our customers see on the front end, is actually owned by our commercial organization. Okay. But they work very closely in partnership with our digital technology in the background to maintain and, actually do the work. But commercial sort of owns a lot of what is happening on those platforms. So there's a lot of those type of projects going on, but we're also a big operational company. So there's a lot of operational things happening in the background in terms of maintaining, employee systems, train systems. And so a lot of the work that we're seeing is, improving employee experience, improving customer experience, which I think are probably obvious and every company is doing. But also there's a lot of work happening just in the operations space in general. So, and there's, a lot of AI, there's tons of stuff just going on that can make us more efficient, more effective. And so just trying to understand what makes sense for us. I heard somebody say once that the railroad is one of the most complex businesses in the world. I don't know if that's true or not, but, from people that I've heard, they say it's more complex than the airlines. And if you think about it, which nothing against the airlines, and they're doing great. But if you think about it, like nobody owns the air, right? There's only limited tracks. And so there's only limited number of trains and capacity, and how do we move more people and get more trains on the line? And so there's just so many factors involved in trying to come up with like an operation solution, for example, that you would just never think about, you know, maybe as an ordinary person or not a real person. So I think that part is fascinating. And I think people here really like to work on those type of projects that really drive change in that space. So
I know some organizations kind of set context for the hackathons. So they, develop a topic or one or more topics to kind of steer people toward a particular area. Do you guys engage with that, or do you kind of let people work on whatever suits their fancy? How do you look at that?
So right now we're sort of in the second half of that. We're letting people just kind of submit ideas as they come in, and we're positioning it more towards, within our strategy, we have something called Drive Transformation, which is one of our key areas that we're working towards. And so right now we're positioning the hackathon around that specifically. And we do aspire to, in the future, have specific, challenges or business problems that the hackathon can focus just on this. And we do hope that we can get to a point where people are actually going out there and building prototypes instead of just creating pitches. I definitely think it'll take a little bit of time. So hopefully that answers your question, but
yeah.
And you said that earlier on that there was a difference between, you were like, oh, that wasn't necessarily a hackathon, that was more of a pitch. So can you talk about those two different programs?
Yeah, so our pitch events are typically more in what you're talking about, where we have a specific challenge or a specific theme from our trend report, our annual trend report, where we're saying, hey, think about this, like historic stations of the future, or, multimodal transportation, meaning like, how do you get from your house to the train station to your final destination after that? So sometimes in our pitch events, we'll pick something that's more of a challenge or a theme based. And in the hackathon right now, it's a little bit more open-ended. And I would say it's different in that right now they're both doing a pitch, but eventually the hackathon will get to a point where it's a little bit more like people are developing prototypes and that type of thing. So they're kind of similar right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm curious advice you would have for someone who's new and trying to help a new in an innovation team, or new with hackathons, and they're trying to help a new department that's booting up their first hackathon. I guess first, what insights do you have for them, or what advice do you have for them? And then I'll probably come back and ask you also, just someone who's new to an innovation team in general, what kind of tips you have for them.
I think with the hackathon itself is a little bit of what I said before. You just need to have persistence and patience and give yourself a little bit of grace, because it's not always going to work out exactly as you hoped. I know there are times when we're in a virtual event or something like that, and it's like, oh, the video's not playing, or, it didn't go off, or nobody submitted an idea. And it's okay. I think it's one of the things that we all probably know about innovation is it's okay to fail, and those are the ways that you learn how to make it better next time. So I think if there's anything I learned from this hackathon specifically and working on this, is that just keep trying and eventually it will catch on. And then I think in an innovation career in general, or, somebody who's maybe new to joining innovation, is that you don't need a degree in innovation to get into an innovation career. I think I'm a good example of that. I personally think you need a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of grit, and just kind of the ability to execute. And I think those are things that, it's not easy. I feel like being in innovation, there's always like people who are like, what are you guys doing? Or this doesn't make sense, or don't want to change. And so you have to convince people of a lot of the stuff that you're doing all the time. And it's good and it's natural. And I think like you just have to have a little bit of, like I said, grit, curiosity, and ability to just go and do it. And sometimes, you didn't do the right thing, and that's okay. And you just get up and try something else. So I think for me, not having the background in innovation and really having like a lot of that core innovation management and knowing how all the processes work and all the methods, and, having to facilitate tons of workshops and things like that, like a lot of my peers, I was a little nervous coming into this role, because I was like, wow, these people have like amazing backgrounds and amazing functional skill sets. And so I think a lot of it is stuff that you can, there's books out there you can read, but it's a lot of learning by doing. And so honestly, I feel like I'm very lucky to work with an amazing team. They are super helpful and super just open. And I feel like we have a great culture of just sharing and collaboration where we're all able to learn from each other. So hopefully, I would encourage other innovation teams to just be open and share. I know sometimes in companies, especially big companies, there can be this sense of ownership and not wanting to share information. And so as a team, we sort of operate in that way. And so I love that. I feel like it gives me a lot of sense of pride in our team and how we work and how we collaborate with other people. And I think it opens a lot of doors for us to be able to work with other teams within Amtrak. So yeah, I would say that's my advice.
Cool.
This is reminding me of the other conversation too that we had about on a previous episode, and hope if it stays in the episode, about the like chicken or egg problem of like creating an innovative culture, right? And it's almost like what you're saying is that it takes a long time, right? And you never know what the missteps might be or the things that won't work. And going back to your chocolates and diner story, it's like if you try enough things, like it will catch on, right? You will catch on. And it does feel like it's more of this kind of flywheel of trying to embed innovation in a culture where it's more about the at-bats and the routine of it than it is, like one magical program or thing that happens.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that makes sense a lot.
So I've got a couple fun questions. What about if you were, if you had coffee with the CEO of Amtrak, and he or she said, what advice do you have for me as we take this organization into the future? What advice would you have for that individual?
Interesting. Well, we have an executive leadership meeting on Thursday where we're presenting. We do a quarterly presentation to our executive leadership team. And I think it's one of those things where I feel like he has a lot of future forward thinking, and which is really great for an older organization. I mean, Amtrak's been around for 50 years. And I mean, there's employees that are generational employees. Like their parents worked in the railroad. They've worked here for their whole careers. They started as, a ticket agent or working on the train and worked their way up to corporate. Like Stephen Gertner himself has been an employee of Amtrak for a long time. And so he's a prime example of that. So I think, continuing to invest in innovation in general, I think we have enough functional skill sets, but I think that people are constantly reaching out to our team to help them solve problems. And so in that sense, we've always juggled with this, do we go with that more internal consultancy approach where it's like we just help them do these projects? And we've kind of taken more of the approach of let's train the trainer and show people how to innovate so that people aren't just coming to us to solve their problems, but rather, we're showing them how to solve their own problems and come up with ideas to solve their problems. So I think continuous investment and honestly, maybe embedding, innovation people in different parts of the organization is something that we talked about. I don't think that's necessarily our strategy right now or even something that we fully solidified, but I do think there's something to say about people who have real functional expertise in engineering and, operations and all of these different skills. Even they kind of say that we have two separate businesses, right? Like we have the passenger rail business, but we also have this construction business where we're building bridges and stations and infrastructure that is core to be able to run our passenger rail service. And so sometimes we're behind because we're trying to learn. We don't know everything about trains. A lot of us didn't know anything about trains before we started here. And so that's not to say we can't learn, but we're not necessarily functional experts in these areas. So something that would be amazing, in my opinion, would be if we had partnerships with an innovation person in every group who had real functional expertise, and we can kind of pull them in and work on these projects where they had a dedicated innovation person in each group who really knew that we can kind of just pull on their knowledge. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for us is really understanding all the ins and outs of the railroad that we don't know just right off the bat. So that would maybe be my advice.
Yeah, Margaret and I have talked many times about there's the innovation team and then there are the individuals in the different functions that have an innovation mindset. And if you can kind of find those champions, if you will, or those allies, if you will, it's like a really interesting interplay that you can have with those folks, because they have all the boots on the ground intelligence, and then you guys can bring resources and frameworks to the table.
Yeah, it's like innovation isn't a role, it's a mindset, or it's like a personality trait.
Wow.
Yeah, which actually, ironically, I guess our name is probably not that unique, but we did just start a group called the Innovation Champions internally, which is sort of like we do a monthly speaker series where we talk about a variety of different topics every month, and people can come and just learn about, like we've recently done one on our 3D printing. We did one on our trend report. So just kind of sharing more about like innovation that's already happening, or things that capabilities we already have, because people, don't always know about what's already out there, what's going on. So we have, I think, maybe like 200 people right now in our Innovation Champions group that we just started. We launched it in March. So
nice.
We've been getting some really good traction, and it's something that we're super excited about. It's great. Our team, in the background, we have this whole like production cycle where we do a recording and and then play the live and do a Q&A. So it's a really fun outlet and a fun way to get people excited about innovation.
Sorry, that recording is for them to talk about their kind of how they innovate in their role, or what's the recording there?
So it's a different topic every month. We sort of host it a lot in like an interview style, where we'll come up with, like, for example, the 3D printing team. That's a team that already exists in Amtrak, has nothing to do with us at all, but we made the connection, and we thought it would be cool to showcase,
I see,
that we even have a 3D printer where we, and so we showed the trophy that we found and that they made, and he explained how a lot of our train parts are no longer available to make their original manufacturers, and so they'll go out to the field and get the parts and then scan them to be fabricated. So
Wow.
Things like that. We have this. Actually, 2 weeks ago, we went out. We have this geometry car, and I think it's called catenary car, where it's a rail car that runs on a regular basis with all these sensors that kind of understands, like, where do we need to do maintenance on the tracks. And so it's not something new. Like, they've had it for probably a long time, but it's something that a lot of people don't know about that we have. So it's more sharing, and some of them are more like we've done some future stuff where we talk about our trend report and signals. So it's really a variety of just, anything that we might think people might be interested in that are kind of in that innovation mindset.
The thing I love the most about these conversations is I'm learning so much all of the time. Like, I didn't know about that. Of course, that makes sense that you would have a like car with sensors that would then tell you where it would need repairs and stuff. But like, I don't get to spend my day thinking about trains, unfortunately. And so I've loved even knowing like quasi government and understanding kind of this like legal status or business status of Amtrak. I feel like I've learned a lot today.
I think it's a brilliant strategy to, I don't even know how intentional or conscious it was, but to showcase the stuff that's actually going on, and then use that as a way to build a bridge to those champions, basically, and build the relationship. You're helping them with something they might want or need, which is more awareness, more visibility on what they do, and then they in turn get to know what you guys do, and you can see how you can help each other in the future. So it's really cool.
Well, it's like demystifying innovation by saying, look, we already have it, right? Like, there are things that are already innovative that maybe you didn't know were going on within the organization or have been going on for many, many years. And then, future stuff as well. But it almost like points out that this cultural shift isn't big and scary, because it's not like we have to wipe our identity clean and build something from scratch. It's like, look, we've been doing this all along. It's just we're focusing on it in this sort of, new way right now.
Yeah. Okay, one more hopefully fun type question. It's going to be a compound question, so you can take your pick, but what's the next trip you want to take by rail, or what's the best trip anyone should take by rail, or what's some obscure thing that no one knows about, or a place you can go with Amtrak that you wouldn't know if you hadn't worked there?
Testing my real knowledge here. So I luckily have recently been doing some research on some long distance trips. I think and I'm not an expert, so hopefully this is right, but I feel like there are a lot of big hubs that connect all of our long distance routes. So I was doing research, and I found that there's like a big Chicago hub, a San Francisco, and LA. So honestly, I mean, it's actually pretty surprising, like where you can actually go on rail. I don't think I actually have ever taken like a real rail trip before I worked at Amtrak, maybe like to New York once or twice. But before I started here and interviewed, I didn't even know that Amtrak was national, which is probably embarrassing, but it's true. And I just feel like there's so much that like, you know, there are so many places you can go. There are so many different lines that we have. I think the most surprising thing that I found on the auto train trip that I just took was just how social the train can be. I honestly was very surprised at how much fun I had. You know, you're in this little, we did a roomette, so we're in this little roomette. I was with my brother, and, you know, they have like a dinner service. If you're in a room or a roomette where you go up to a dining car and you get to sit down and meet other people who, you know, they just sit you next to random people who walked in before you, and you get to just like chat. I feel like you're across from people in the room from you. I was across from somebody who grew up like 5 houses down from where I live right now.
Oh, that's so cool.
I thought like the element of the social aspect of the train is something that you just can't really experience somewhere else. I always think about it when you're like, I don't know, on a plane or a bus and you're like, oh no, who am I going to get stuck next to?
Headphones on.
Headphones on. You don't want to talk to people. You get in your zone. And I felt like the train was just this experience where you get to like talk to people and meet people and hear their stories. And of course, I probably was like leaning into it because I was doing a little bit of research and just kind of wanted to hear people's experiences. But, you know, it was just generally very fun. So honestly, I would encourage anyone who has time, you know, or is interested in it to go out and explore the different routes. There's plenty of blogs that can outline like the best routes way better than I can because I haven't been on all of them. But I think, you know, a lot of people say the California Zephyr, the Starlight, Coast Starlight. You know, there are a lot of really, really cool routes out west. But I mean, you can go a lot of different places on the train. So I think just a little bit of exploration of what you're interested in and what you want to do. But yeah.
My dad was a enjoy the journey kind of guy, and he and my mom actually, they came to visit in San Francisco, and they took the Amtrak through the Rockies where they have like the window on the top of the train. And then, so instead of just flying back from San Francisco, they basically took the train through the Rockies and then got a train from, I guess, or got a plane from Colorado. So I guess the train is better than the plane.
I think, and your other question about like what would be my next train trip, I'm super interested. I know some of my coworkers have done this, but doing like an international rail trip. I've heard of some of the trains in Europe, and you see they have like whole cars that are just dedicated. I said I have a 3-year-old just dedicated to children. You know, sometimes it can be a challenge. So I'd be interested in kind of seeing that experience and what that's like. I'm sure it's a whole different vibe and not easy to implement, but those are some of the things that, you know, there are some crazy trains that they upscale trains and luxury trains that they have now. So one of those would definitely be an interesting, fun experience.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. It was great to chat with you and hear some of the successes that you're having in your very early days there at Amtrak. And thanks for joining us on the pod. And we'll look forward to chatting with you soon.
All right. Thank you both for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you.
I thought that was fascinating, right? My brain was spinning not only in just thinking about innovation on Amtrak, but also just Amtrak in general. I feel like my brain doesn't normally spend time thinking about the rail system or the government's influence in it or innovation and rail technology and the complexities of not only running a passenger train system, but also the infrastructure and building and construction that it needs. Even down to when she was talking about how a lot of the train parts now aren't manufactured anymore. And so they have the 3D printer that they'll go find the part and then scan it and then send it out to fabrication themselves. Like that to me is just a complexity of problems that I don't think about on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think that's one of the perks of working in this area is that you kind of get exposure to not only these really dynamic people, but also these really, interesting business challenges. And, I personally love just her story. These innovation people there's never a boring way that they got into these roles. It's like one of my favorite questions to ask.
But their background always feels like, and I mean this in like the most respectful, most honoring way, it's always like pinball, right? Like it's always their career paths are kind of like, I just like creative, interesting problems, and so it kind of looks like it bounces around, but then they find themselves in these roles.
I think that like when you're a generalist and you're young, you're looking for this one vector, but you're a generalist, so you're like popping up all over the radar screen, and then over time eventually makes sense to you because she's in a role now where she does help people in operations one day and marketing the next day and digital technology the next day. So It's actually good that she has some of that varied experience.
The last thing that I think that really stood out for me in that conversation was just she's clearly has tenacity, right? She clearly has stick-to-itiveness. Like, I think that this idea of even back when she was a child, she recognized that her own ability to see the world and to see kind of the differences in, culture and countries, that was embedded like so deeply with her when she was little that she, did no matter what it took to like go on that trip and have that experience. And you pointed it out during the conversation, but that's a clear line through her entire life of just like, hey, I'm not going to worry about how to not do this. I'm going to try to do it and we'll see where we go, right? And I think that's a really useful trait for somebody in innovation to have, which is like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and she's ready to take her 3-year-old over to Europe and explore the rail system there.
Right?
Go through the mountains in Switzerland or something.
And I have kids of that age, and we, I'm not hopping Everett on a flight to then take a train. I'll tell you that.
It does tend to change your relationship with time, though, because I feel like you're always rushed doing everything, and then when you're on a train, you're like, I ain't going anywhere for like a couple hours, so you just kind of sit there and. There's no TV, it's nice. I mean, I like just letting Jackson look out the window and, to me, it's like a real TV. It's like the scene keeps changing, but it's actually real cows and real mountains and real grass and rivers and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the antidote to screen time, right? It's just park them in front of a window on a train.
Yep. And then they're kind of forced to talk to you, and they don't have all the distractions.
They lock them in a small cabin car, and then they have to talk to you. Yeah. Follow us for more parenting advice.
Yeah, leave us comments below about your stories.
Come for the innovation chat. Stay for the parenting advice.
Yep. All right, Margaret. I think that's another great episode. Great to be with you again, and we'll see you again another week.
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Synthesize Pod. For more resources on how to bring innovation to the forefront of your organization, sign up for our newsletter at brightidea.com. That's BRIGHTIDEA.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.